Most of the time, when people hear princess movie, their mind immediately goes to Disney, and it's no wonder why. Disney has had pretty much a monopoly on the idea of princesses for quite some time, even when they've branched out into many other kinds of stories and originally specialized in movies more like Old Yeller and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. When they became an animation powerhouse, princesses were their bread and butter. However, they weren't the only ones who tried to cash in on the popularity of little girls who wanted to be princesses. Many other companies and producers tried the same, with varying degrees of success. Swan Princess is an example of that. Produced by Nest Entertainment, it gave the traditional ballet its own spin, making it more kid-friendly and giving it a clearer villain, simplifying the story for a younger audience who probably had never even heard of the Black Swan Ballet. I certainly hadn't when I first saw it. The Swan Princess follows the story of Princess Odette and Prince Derek. In fact, it begins when Odette was born, with absolutely no mention of her mother or what happened to her. It's worth noting here that this movie was very much trying to compete with Disney at the time and took a lot of tropes from Disney's movies, so it's pretty safe to assume that Odette's mother succumbed to Disney mom-itis and died the moment she produced a girl child. The king certainly never seemed upset or sad or anything, so for all we know he had mistresses and Odette was born to one of them and she just kind of was never acknowledged as the mother or anything. In all the sequels and everything that followed the first movie, Odette's mother, or Derek's father for that matter, are never mentioned. Yay, family values, I guess? King William, Odette's father, and Queen Uberta, Derek's mother, who also has no husband, immediately come up with the idea to pair up their kids when they're grown to unite their kingdoms. If you two are so determined to unite the kingdoms, why don't you just marry each other? He's a king, she's a queen, and neither of them have an established partner, so why not just get married and unite the kingdom now? Sure, that'd make Derek and Odette step-siblings, but it's not like royalty has ever had objections to keeping it in the family back in the day, and that way you wouldn't have to bank on them liking each other or getting along when you two get along just fine, even if you don't necessarily love each other. Royal marriages seldom involve love at all. Even today, in countries that still have royalty, love is not that much of a factor when it comes to marriages. If their main goal is to unite their kingdoms into one big kingdom, the easiest way would just be for them to marry each other and do it now instead of waiting for the kids to grow up and maybe marry someday. But instead of doing the logical thing, they have Odette come to the kingdom Queen Uberta and Derek live in every summer in the hopes that she and Derek will fall in love. They're actually really fun as kids, and this is probably the best song and sequence in the movie. We can see that as a very young child, Odette was fiery and bold. One of her first comments about Derek is being that she bets he doesn't wrestle, hunt, or box, raising her own fists and showing that she is no delicate wilting flower, unlike her older self. She and Derek can't stand each other throughout most of their lives, avoiding each other, cheating at games, even having to be physically dragged into each other's general area just to spend time together. You'd think that after however many years of this, their families would take the hint and try to figure something else out, but nope. They just keep pushing harder and harder until I guess puberty hits them both like a truck, and they see someone who looks hot and immediately want to throw themselves at the other. Derek is all for the marriage happening right away, but Odette has some hesitation and asks him what he actually loves about her now, which is a fair question. So far, their whole lives, they've avoided each other and almost hated each other, and now he suddenly wants to bind their lives together? What changed? Derek says that she's beautiful, and she asks, what else? Is beauty all he cares about? To which Derek replies, what else is there? Clearly not something any woman wants to hear, and obviously the wedding is called off. King William berates his daughter in the carriage as they're heading home, asking what she expected him to say. Odette explained that she wanted to be loved for being her, not just for being a pretty face. Something you'd think her father would understand, but he apparently doesn't. Their ride home is interrupted by the villain of the movie, Rothbart, an evil warlock who turns into a bat-like creature and attacks. One of the guards manages to escape and get back to Derek's castle, telling them that they were attacked by a great animal. Monster, dude. You can say monster. Also, this guy was apparently King William's captain, so wouldn't he know who Rothbart is and be able to recognize him? They saw him in his human form before he transformed right in front of them. They should know who it was. Why wouldn't he tell them Rothbart returned and turned into a monster and attacked us? For that matter, why didn't King William tell Derek when Derek reached him instead of wasting his time with that "it's not what it seems" nonsense? There was no secrecy or trickery here. An evil warlock turned into a monster and attacked. That's exactly what it seems. Just tell the prince that. But no, instead he gives Derek some cryptic "it's not what it seems" baloney and tells him that Odette is gone. Not dead, although that's what everyone clearly assumes he means, just gone. Could have saved everyone a lot of trouble if he was just a little clearer. Rothbart takes Odette to the ruins of an old castle on Swan Lake, where he curses her to turn into a swan. She can become human again, but only by being on the lake when the moon is out so the moonlight can change her back. When she turns back into a human, she tries to run away, but Rothbart tells her that as soon as the moonlight isn't on the lake anymore, she'll turn back into a swan, and she does what becomes her default reaction to everything from this point on. Puts her face in her hands and cries. Question: what happened to that spunky, brave, takes-no-trash girl she was growing up? I know people change a lot throughout their lives, I certainly did, but they don't lose everything that they used to be. Someone who was brave doesn't just become a complete coward and no longer have any scraps of bravery left in them. They can be buried deep by trauma and other issues, sure, but they're not gone. What happened to the fire she used to have? The girl she used to be would have picked up a branch, knocked Rothbart out cold, chained him up or fed him to the gators, and found a way out of there. Even as a swan, she could still do something. She could have flown away and communicated with someone by drawing in the dirt or with chalk or something. She could have attacked Rothbart. Do you know how powerful a swan's wings are? I'm pretty sure the spell would break when his neck did. But that just wouldn't fit into the damsel in distress storyline they're going for, so all of her previous bravery and spirit is drained away and replaced with vapid prettiness. She does at least try something. She befriends 3 animals that she can apparently talk to now because of the spell. A frog who thinks he's actually a prince, a tortoise who is just generally good-natured, even if his voice actor was an odd choice, to say the least, and a puffin who fancies himself a lieutenant and tries to take charge of the situation. For some reason, it seems like they can't actually talk to the 2 crocodiles, which is kinda weird. I guess it would have messed with them being antagonists if they could actually hold a conversation, but it'd be cool if they could talk to them and just, I don't know, get them to eat Rothbart or something. They decide to try and find a map so they can get a message to Derek, who Odette says is her one true love now, despite everything that happened before. You know he hasn't changed, right? I mean, do you not remember the last conversation you had where he told you that you were nothing to him but a pretty face? Is beauty being all he cares about suddenly okay? Well, I guess so. With all their disagreements apparently forgotten, her only concern is getting out of there. Well, fair enough for the moment, I guess. They go through a bit of back and forth with Rothbart's little helper lady to steal a map. While all of this is going on, Derek has been training, if you can really call it that, forcing his servants to dress up like animals so he can shoot them and try to become an expert marksman so he can hunt down the great animal as revenge for King William and trying to find Odette, though everyone else believes that she's dead. They don't even seem too torn up about it, with his mother constantly trying to get him to be interested in other princesses, which not only is a little weird considering that they saw her growing up all this time, and should see her like a close friend or even family and should be a lot more upset about her being gone. But this also begs the question, what exactly happened to William's kingdom? The king is dead and the heir is missing and presumed dead, and we never hear about it being in anyone else's hands, so does that mean it just kind of automatically got absorbed into Uberta's kingdom the way they were originally planning to? It seems like pretty common knowledge that they wanted to combine the kingdoms, but no one mentions anything about it, and Uberta is just kind of throwing whatever princesses she can find at her son. This doesn't even seem like the first time, with Derek asking her not to turn the ball she's planning into one of her beauty pageants. It hasn't even been that long since Odette went missing, and she's already hosted multiple beauty pageants to try and get Derek married off to just whoever. They really didn't care about her going missing at all, did they? Through some back and forth and a plan made by Puffin, Derek is finally led to the lake and sees that Odette is alive. He wants to fight Rothbart and take Odette back there and there, but Odette tells him Rothbart is too powerful and explains how the spell works. The only thing that can break it is a vow of everlasting love proven to the world. Derek says that the ball the next night would be perfect for that and leaves. With Rothbart showing up and laughing at Odette, holding the bow Derek dropped and telling her that he knows all about their plan, and it won't work because there is no moon the next night. To which Odette responds with her typical crying routine instead of planning to, I don't know, fly to the castle tomorrow and tell Derek somehow that they have to change the plan. Rothbart does actually take a more proactive step this time and puts Odette in a cistern so she can't fly away, though her friends get her out pretty easily. However, Rothbart does have a plan this time. He turns his servant into Odette and takes her to the ball wearing a black dress. The strangest part here is that no one but Derek recognizes her. Everyone else seems bewildered and doesn't know who she is, even though these are people who saw Odette growing up throughout her whole life, 4 months out of every single year. Was she truly so unremarkable that they don't remember someone they saw their whole lives? Are they all really face-blind? Was she really beauty and nothing else to the point that they can't even recognize her when she's standing right in front of them? In any case, Rothbart's trick works, and Derek makes the vow to the fake Odette, which apparently means that the real one will die for some reason, which seems like it would destroy Rothbart's plan, but okay. Apparently, his plan the whole time was to try and get Odette to marry him so he could have the kingdom. Sure, he could take it by raw force, but he said that if he does that, he'll spend his entire life fighting to keep it, whereas if he marries her, it'll be his rightfully and he won't have to fight for it. But now he's just okay with letting her die? I'd say that maybe he plans on having his servant continue posing as her and act as though they got married so he can claim the kingdom that way, but he pulled this whole Odette will die and revealed the act in front of all the kingdoms and their representatives, so there's no way that would work anymore. What was his plan now? To just take everything by force the way he said he didn't want to earlier? Well, whatever the case may be, Derek rushes out to get to Odette, who has collapsed and turned human again, despite there being no moon and not being on the lake, telling her that he's always loved her courage and kindness, not just her beauty. Okay, would have been very convenient if you just said that before, but also, what courage or kindness? The only kindness she's demonstrated was towards Puffin, who you don't know and weren't there to see, and she really hasn't been acting very courageously. If anything, the courage and fire she had as a child seem to be long gone, replaced by, well, the typical damsel in distress routine. Rothbart arrives and mocks Derek, with Derek demanding that he doesn't let Odette die. Rothbart says he'll save her if Derek can defeat him, transforming into the Bat Monster and attacking. Derek is unarmed and pretty thoroughly getting his butt kicked to start with. He managed to find his bow, but he has no arrows, until his cowardly friend, who had been captured by Rothbart earlier, pulls off a trick they'd done in training and fires an arrow for Derek to catch, which he does and shoots Rothbart with, killing him and destroying his magic. This breaks the spell on Odette, with all of them returning to Derek's castle, Odette and Derek getting married, and the animal friends apparently being able to talk to people in general now, though they couldn't before. Maybe leftovers from Rothbart's magic? Who knows? But in any case, the story ends with a neat little bow, with them getting married, presumably the kingdoms now combined into one, and live happily ever after. The end. The marks of competing with Disney are everywhere, from the art style being one that is very similar to Disney's signature look, to the musical aspect and the animal sidekicks, and a lot of other marks that movies trying to out-Disney Disney would have. Disney was king of the mountain at that time, and everyone, even artists whose greatest strength was in how they differed from Disney, were trying to get a slice of that ever-lucrative princess pie. Even Don Bluth, whose best movies didn't follow the Disney formula at all, threw in the towel and ended up trying to get some of that sweet, sweet princess money. This is usually to those films' detriment more than anything. Sure, they might make some money, but not nearly at Disney numbers, and it just taints the studio when they paint themselves as knockoff Disney. If they hadn't tried to shoehorn in the hallmarks of Disney, the movie could have been a lot stronger. For example, if they'd kept her fiery spirit from when she was a kid and had her stand up more to Rothbart, she could have been a much more interesting character. For sure, the people who watched her grow up should have recognized her instantly, so there wouldn't be that weirdness that makes it feel like she really was nothing but a pretty face to all of them. I mean, how do you not recognize somebody who hasn't been missing for very long, who you watched grow up, and had in your home 4 months out of every single year? How do you not know her face instantly? And wouldn't you mourn someone who is basically family to you that whole time, rather than instantly moving on and trying to get your son to like someone else? There was a lot of strange emotional detachment that was never explained or addressed, not even in the later movies that basically followed the same formula. Odette gets kidnapped, turned into a bird, has to be rescued by Derek, rinse and repeat. I didn't really see any of the 3D animated ones, and from what I've heard about them, that's a good thing. It seems like no one was particularly impressed with them, and they just got weirder and weirder. And these characters were just not designed for 3D animation. Personally, I feel like for any story set in a fantasy world or in the past, they should use 2D. 3D works okay for stuff that's set in a modern age or futuristic, although I personally prefer 2D for those two, but especially for anything that's set in a fantasy world or a long time ago, 2D just feels right. But I may be a little biased, since I prefer 2D for basically anything animated. Thank you all for joining me. I know that there's a lot going on in the world, but remember to take care of yourself. You can't help others if you can't take care of yourself too. Have a cup of tea, stay warm and safe, and I'll see you in the next one.